Okay, so if the audio is a little bit weird, that's because I'm recording it on my phone and then I'm just cutting out the video and just leaving the audio because my microphone broke yesterday. I tweeted about this, and my new microphone, I don't know when it will arrive, hopefully while I'm still here. So if this is a little bit weird, that's because everything about this is weird. So yeah, today we're gonna talk about the Cullens. And the main issue I had with them in both the books and the movies was that I felt like there were too many of them. Like you have two couples, like three, but two in like who are in school, like four people plus Edward. And it's just like it's so much that I originally thought about cutting both Emmett and Esme because why specifically these two? Because they don't have a purpose in the story, like except being there. Like Emmett in the movies, Emmett is treated as comic relief, which I think is nice. But Esme is just like her whole character is mom. Like she's the mom, and that's her whole character. And I felt the same about Rosalie, because Rosalie's entire character for like book one, like I don't even think if she appears that much in book two, in New Moon. But her entire purpose in Twilight is her entire character is bitch. Like that's her character, and I don't know. But the only reason why I decided to specifically keep her is just because the reason why she's a bitch towards Bella, and yeah. So in the end, I decided to keep all the Cullens except Esme, because I think Esme is just like, she serves literally no purpose in the story. I have no good reason to keep her except for she's nice, but like that's my second problem with the Cullens. It's they are all nice, and that's like okay, I get it, but at the same time, that's not logical. I don't understand. I mean, I understand, but that's not, it doesn't make sense is what I'm trying to say. So let's go through the Cullens step by step. So while the video is running, I probably already started with Edward, and Edward is my biggest problem from all the Cullens. So I will include little bits and maybe even pictures from the companion guide, because I bought it for $3 on Kindle. Now I have that, and apparently I can screenshot, so I'm gonna include little bits here and there. So Edward, as we all know, is the main love interest. He was, I think, turned in the 1920s. He's like averagely tall, and yeah, my main problem with him, like in the movies and the books, is that he's so melodramatic, creepy, and obsessive that if he weren't a vampire, that would be really fucking scary. That would be like all the red flags. That's also the reason why I think a lot of people don't like 50 Shades, because it's basically Edward with all his creepiness, but he's just rich. Like that's his entire character, he's creepy and rich. And I was like, yeah, I talked about this like for the past month, that I thought about making Edward like a girl, so we have like a little bit of LGBT representation in the story. But then I kind of read the books again, like I read Twilight, and I started reading New Moon currently, and Edward is such a creepy character that I don't feel comfortable like having 4 books worth of character development for him, like relationship for him with the main character. That's like no. So I decided to, okay, what can we do with them? And then I looked at how he's described in the books. Like, he's, of course, super gorgeous and super hot. And he has high cheekbones, a strong jawline, perfect eyebrows, a straight nose and full lips, bronze, untidy hair, and had green eyes and life. And he's also described as thin and lanky, but muscular, because he's a vampire, and all vampires must be sexy, right? And he's also kind of described as brooding and stubborn, but also charming, polite, and like a gentleman. And what set me off when I read that in the book, I think it's an actual line, he has a very short temper, and I'm just like, no. Excuse me, Bella, that's like red flag number 1, and red flag number 2 is that he watches Bella sleep. Because that's something people do, right? So he comes across as, he's like very pretty, and he comes across as very creepy. And I was like, yeah, okay, so what I thought about is kind of merging Rosalie and Edward. So Rosalie's main thing is that she's very beautiful and kind of narcissistic. And I was like, okay, so what if? Because that's like kind of a major point in the book, that Edward, like, I think Jessica says this to Bella, like, nobody's good enough for him. And I'm just like, okay, we can work with that. So maybe Edward is the bitch. So he's kind of like this very narcissistic guy, like he can have every girl, and he kind of wants to get into Bella's pants, to say it like that, but Bella's like entirely unfazed because he's just a pretty guy, and just like, okay, she kind of sees through his facade that he has like no personality except he's fucking creepy. And I wanted to keep that. So yeah, that's kind of the version of Edward that I kind of gonna be working with. Like, he's the pretty boy, but he's fucking creepy at the same time. Yeah, I think that's the gist of it. I gave him like some cool but casual clothing because I felt like that's like kind of what he would wear, I think. I couldn't decide on the color of his cardigan, and I decided to give him, like, in the picture, of course in the book he's gonna wear different stuff, but in the sketch he's gonna be wearing a red cardigan. And the only reason why I settled on red is that I felt like it's a muted red, like it's a brown almost, a mahogany, Bordeaux, whatever you want. But I thought that red is such a, like, it's a red flag. That's the whole point, it's a red flag. Yeah, so I also decided to, specifically for him, keep the golden eyes, because that's like such a big thing for Bella. Like, oh my god, the amount of times she says he smolded her with his eyes, I could puke. And I wanted to keep that because that's kind of giving him this little exotic and supernatural kind of flair. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's what we're gonna do. Then, next up is Alice. Alice is described as, like, Bella's best friend, kind of. She becomes very good friends with Bella. I think, I don't know about the book, but in the movie, he says, oh, we're gonna be best friends, I can see it, like, because she has clairvoyance, like, she can see the future. She's also described as very short, kind of like a pixie cut hairstyle. She's described as very kind of like a ballerina. And the reason why she has the pixie cut hair is because she was in a mental institution, like an asylum, and got her hair shaved. And in the process of growing it back, she became a vampire. And yeah, that's a detail I wanted to keep. What I didn't like how Maya handled it, her character, is that she was like very quirky and super happy, and I was like, okay, why was she? Because that didn't become clear to me, like, why was she in the mental institution? It's implied that she had visions when she was still human, and that sounds a lot like schizophrenia for me. Like, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but that sounds like schizophrenia for me. And yeah, I didn't like how Stephanie Meyer handled, like, a mentally ill character. So I decided to kind of keep her backstory, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna work with it yet. I thought about her being turned not in the 20s, like 1920s, but like in the maybe 1870s or something. Because Alice wasn't turned by Carlyle like all the other Cullens. But instead by someone else. And I was like, it would be interesting to give her like a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade backstory. If you don't know, Vampire the Masquerade is a role-playing game that has been made into video games. A new video game is coming out this year. And there's a clan called Malkavians who are like, they're all crazy. Like, when you get turned, all of them have like a mental derangement. Some of them have schizophrenia, some of them have paranoia. Like, it's very different for each of them. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe we can work with that. I'm not sure what kind of... I mean, I want to keep her like this happy girl because I wanted to keep her clothing style very edgy, very goth, as you can see. But I wanted her to be like her book self, like kind of very quirky and everything. So I don't know, I don't want to make her just manic, so maybe she's gonna be, I don't know, bipolar, but that's also kind of like so overdone in books, so that's like something I'm still figuring out. So yeah, about her eye color I wasn't sure, I tried different things, but I settled on what is described in the companion guide, that she has brown eyes. Yeah, about the eyes, I'm not giving the Cullens the golden eyes because I think that's stupid, because people maybe in real life would have noticed that that's kind of weird, like that eyes change color. That's kind of a weird thing, and so I decided to give them normal eyes. That's like the gist of it. I give them normal eyes, because yeah, I think that makes sense, I feel like. Yeah, so I think that's all about her. Yeah, the only thing that's very important about her, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep that in the book. Alice was James, like James is the main bad guy in Twilight, in the first book. She was his singer, that means what Bella is to Edward. Her blood was especially tasty for him, and that's all about Alice. So what I'm going to do is just give the characters more backstory than what they have in the book, or like what is mentioned in the companion guide, just because they don't have any, okay? Then next up is Alice's boyfriend, to say that, Jasper. Personally, back when I was a Twilight, Jasper and Alice were my favorite characters. Like, Jasper was my book crush, seriously. There is, watching it back and reading the books, there's like literally nothing about Jasper where I would be like, oh, that's a great side character, because he literally has no presence. And like the only gist I got from him is that he's creepy. I don't know what was wrong with me, but yeah, I decided to keep him, mostly the way he is, like with his backstory. Which is, I don't quite remember, but he was turned like somewhere in the Civil War, I think. And he kind of fought in the Vampire Wars, they're called. And that's like his most backstory. And then he came to the Cullens, like both Alice and him were turned by Carlilse. And his special ability is that he can manipulate emotions, which I think is very, very cool. I wanted to keep that no matter what. In the companion guide, he's described as very tall and lean, and his body is covered in bite marks, like scars, which I think is interesting, but in the book it's like, you can't see them except if you're a vampire, and I'm just like, that's stupid. I don't like this. So yeah, and his personality is described as cold, calculating on the outside, but he's really nice and kind underneath. And Alice describes him as the good southern gentleman, which I think is funny. And he has the worst self-control of all Cullens with coming to blood, which doesn't make sense, but at the same time makes sense. Yeah, kind of, I'm still figuring out how I want to treat that in my version. But for his outfit, I kind of was like, okay, so maybe he doesn't care about clothing at all, but Alice really does. And what if Alice just dresses him up? Like, oh my god, we're gonna wear this today, we're gonna match. And I was like, and he's just, sure. And I thought that was maybe cute. So they're just gonna be a cute couple. Also, this kind of like Alice being a little bit more goth, more alternative, kind of goes into direction what I want to take, which is that the Cullens are described as outsiders in the books, but I want to make them like really outsiders. I'm still figuring out details as of now, but I don't want to make them popular, like extremely popular with the Forks residents or wherever this is gonna take place. So yeah, that's I think the gist of Jasper. So next up is Rosalie. Rosalie was hard to figure out because Yeah, I mentioned mixing her with Edward as characters, and I wasn't quite sure how I want to deal with her. And so I wanted to kind of keep her bitch attitude, but at the same time I wanted her to be really nice underneath. Like, when Bella first meets her, she's like a really bitch to her because of reasons mentioned in the book, because Rosalie wants to be human again. But in actuality, she's a really nice person. And she's kind of also taking on the role of Esme, like the mom friend, kind of. And I merged her with Esme just because Esme was described as looking like a silent era actress. And I was like, that would be cool for Rosalie, because if you look up at pictures, I just googled like silent era actresses. They are all kind of unconventionally, like for today's standards, but they are very pretty, very striking in appearance, and I kind of wanted to keep that because Rosalie is described as very, very pretty in the books and the movies. What I changed about her, she's no longer blonde, because I don't know, personally, because I'm not blonde, it kind of bugged me always when like the pretty girl is always blonde, because excuse me, some girls who are dark-haired, or like even dark-skinned, are so fucking pretty, like no blonde could compare. Like most blondes couldn't compare. And I wanted to give her like the striking appearance they had inside of the movie, where they all were really pale, with dark eyes, dark brows, and dark hair. I didn't give her short hair just because I thought it wouldn't fit her, and I saw that some silent era actresses had long hair, and I wanted to give her that because it looked cool. And then I also wanted her to dress kind of androgynously, kind of like 20s-ish, because I thought that would kind of fit her. And the difference from, like the main difference from the books, is that she's not a student. Like I mentioned that this is taking place in college, and I wanted her to be like a teacher, like a professor. Because I could imagine that. And I'm not sure, I'll have to look into the companion guide again for that, for what she's teaching, but I thought about giving her like art history or history or English literature or something. It should correspond with Bella because she has to meet her somewhere in college naturally, so we're just gonna figure that out. I think that's most about her. I'm not yet sure about her backstory and everything, but yeah. Oh yeah, one little detail I found interesting. I think that was only mentioned in the companion guide or on the wiki. I don't know where I read it. But Rosalie is surprisingly enough a very good mechanic. Like, she loves to repair cars. And I was like, why didn't I know that? Like, that's the only interesting bit about her personality, I think, and I don't think it's even clear in the movies or the books. Like, what the fuck? Then next up is Emmett. I wanted to cut him from my version, but he kind of grew on me, especially his movie version, because he's the comic relief character and he's just so cute. You have to imagine like this bear of a man, and he's just like childish and cute, and I was like, oh, I love that. Emmett is described as very, very tall and very, very strong, so I kind of was like, okay, so he's gonna be on the college football team. Like, that kind of was a no-brainer for me. And he's described as being like very outspoken, that he never worries, that he's kind of reckless, impatient, and competitive. And for some reason he also loves chess, but he doesn't play against Edward or Alice because one of them can read minds and the other can see the future, so it's kind of unfair. And I was like, oh, that's cute. And I was like, okay, so we have these little bits and here and there. So he's gonna be on the college football team, but also in the chess club. Because I wanted to make him like a major geek, because you have this bear of a man, like tall, muscly. And then he's kind of like, oh my god, have you heard this new show came out? And yeah, that also kind of fits his childish personality. There is currently not very much more to him, but he's just like, I wanted to keep him as the comic relief. I think in the movies there were like two bits. One of them was where they cook for Bella. This is not in the books. And Rosalie's like, is she even Italian? Because they cook Italian food. And he's like, well, her name is Bella. And I'm just like, that's a weird assumption because her name is actually Isabella, but Yeah, and then in the second movie, in New Moon, when Bella turns 18 because Edward is 17, Emmett goes to Edward and says, "Huh, dating an older woman?" And I was like, oh my god, this character is the best character in the entire story. So too bad that he doesn't play a major role. So we're also kind of giving him like more stage presence because he's great. My new favorite character. And then we have, last but not least, Carlilse, because I cut Esme. Carlilse, I described him as being handsome enough to turn straight men gay, because that's like the only thing I kind of want to keep about him. Carlilse is the oldest of them. He was turned somewhere around the 1600s. I don't quite remember when exactly. And he was the son of a preacher who hunted like vampires, witches, and everything. And I think that's cool. That's like a very cool backstory, considering he gets turned into a vampire. And why the Cullens are vegetarians, because Carlilse was so compassionate that he just couldn't feed on humans, I assume because it would kind of alarm his father as well. And then he just, yeah, he starved himself until he found like an animal, and then he found out that he could drink animal blood. I'm not yet sure if I'm gonna keep that bit in my version, but I think that's interesting. We're gonna talk about the vampire myth a little bit in a second. Then he's described as being like very, very kind, very gentle, soft and peaceful. And I was like, yeah, cool. And I didn't change anything about him. Like, you can see maybe in the video that I'm kind of like just not really putting effort in drawing him, and that's because no matter what I draw, I couldn't make him justice. Like, I couldn't draw him how pretty I wanted him to be. So yeah, there's that. About majors for Edward, Alice, and Jasper, and Emmett, aside from his scholarship for football, I'm gonna figure all of that out, because I have no idea yet. Alice, I could imagine her like being doing something weird, like I don't know, game design, for example, because that's like certainly not weird enough. But I also could imagine her being like something like, I don't know, I have no idea what kind of majors there are. But Jasper is described, I think, in the companion guide that he has good business skills, so I wanted him to be like a business student, because that's kind of like, I have this little bit of story for the 4th book already, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep that, and that's the reason why Jasper's gonna study business management, whatever, something business stuff. About Edward, I don't know. Like, does it even matter? Like, he's probably gonna be a frat boy, if I'm honest. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. The vampire myth, yeah. I kind of get a headache thinking about the vampire myth, because I read through the companion guide and saw and read what Stephanie Meyer had written about the vampires, and it's like, it's so bad. And it's so bad just because I can understand the way she reasons all of that. Like, for example, why vampires sparkle and why all of them are muscular and yada yada. But at the same time, oh my god, it's so bad. My main problem is that they have no weaknesses. Like, they don't burn in the sun. Garlic is not a weakness. They show up in mirrors. They cannot be killed by conventional means. And I'm just like, what is the point of vampires? Like, I don't know if I'm gonna keep like any major weaknesses, like the sunlight thing or whatever, but there is a lot of adjusting I will have to do. I will most probably, because I'm not putting in much effort into this, because this is just like a for funsies project. But I'm probably gonna base most of the vampire lore on Vampire the Masquerade, because I think Vampire the Masquerade deals with that very well. I mean, okay, in Vampire the Masquerade, vampires burn in the sun, we're gonna have to figure out something else then. But other than that, that's the gist of it. I'm gonna add a little bit of my own bits here and there, just because we have to do that. And yeah, I think that's all. Like, of course there are characters that I haven't mentioned yet, because, like, for example, main love interest number 2, Jacob Black, but he's not as interesting, and I don't want to make like an entire video on him. So that's like most for the main characters. The next video is gonna be probably about story structure, because for some reason the entire recap, like chapter by chapter, is in the companion guide, which means I wouldn't have to read the books, actually. So yeah, we're gonna work through that, what I changed, what I added, what I cut, and then I'm gonna write, and then we'll figure out everything else, I think. Yeah, I think that's all. Not gonna talk about other characters, and oh yeah, maybe, because I found an article online, I'm gonna talk about an article called Why You Have to Read Twilight, because I was clickbaited, and the article itself is great, but I'm maybe gonna postpone that until my new microphone arrives.